But first, in an interview with ITV News this week, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, refused to rule out a surprise return for Boris Johnson to the Cabinet and admitted they're still in contact over the phone. The possible move to bring the blonde bombshell back is not unprecedented. Boris may be out of Parliament, but that didn't stop Mr Sunak installing ex-PM David Cameron as Foreign Secretary. So might a place in the House of Lords and a seat around the Cabinet table for Boris, perhaps as Defence Secretary or even Chancellor, transform Rishi Sunak's political fortunes? Who better to ask than two stalwarts of the political scene, current leader of UKIP and former Tory MP Neil Hamilton, and political commentator and author Christine Hamilton. Neil, the Conservatives are on political death row. Sunak's got nothing to lose in making such a bold move, has he?
Well, I think you've got a point there. Boris is, if nothing else, a character, and nobody could ever accuse Rishi Sunak of being a character, or Keir Starmer for that matter. But you've got to remember that, Boris is a bull who carries his own china shop round with him, and he's always accompanied by the sound of smashing crockery and broken glass, metaphorically. So it may not be the answer to every maiden's prayer, although I dare say many maidens might have thought that in the past and be sorely disappointed, but in Boris's case. But the Tories aren't really going to do anything, I think, which is going to save them from the coming oblivion, because the voters have already made up their mind as a result of 13 years of failure over almost every area of government. They haven't delivered properly on Brexit. Migration is completely out of control. The green agenda is still roaring full scale ahead to the immense cost of the poorest in society. Crime and so on is out of control in so many areas. Everybody thinks we live in a country where nothing works anymore. And I can't see that even bringing back the blonde bombshell is going to change the realities of the decisions that people have already made in their minds.
Well, let's talk to the blonde bombshell sat next to you. Christine, wouldn't this boost Tory support in the Red Wall, who supported Boris so enthusiastically in 2019?
Well, the very fact that Rishi may or may not be thinking about this shows that paucity of talent on the Tory benches. I mean, we've already had David Cameron exhumed from the political grave. Surely he's not going to exhume Boris. But yes, you're absolutely right. Boris is responsible for a very large percentage of that vote in 2019, getting the Red Wall. And they are the people who the Tory party has to win back. If they can keep all their 2019 voters, then they're in with a chance. And obviously it's superficially attractive. But no, I mean, honestly, the idea that Boris could come back, to me, is they must be desperate, to be honest, which they probably are. But no, it's an absolute nonsense, desperate stuff.
Neil, the advantage of having Boris in the Cabinet, as hinted there by Christine, is not his ministerial expertise. I mean, I think he was a dreadful foreign secretary, but it's having him on the campaign trail in the run-up to an election. There's no one like him.
Well, he will certainly add to the gaiety of the nation, but I think general election campaigns are about a bit more than that. He certainly would be a brilliant campaigner. That's the one thing he does really well. And you can't imagine Rishi Sunak on the stump having much influence on anybody. So, yes, I can see the attractions of bringing back Boris as a campaigner. And given that we've only got months now until the general election takes place, there's very little damage that he could do if he was back in the government. There isn't time to do real damage. So, but on the other hand, there are plenty of people who could be exhumed. I mean, what about Jerry and me, for example?
Well, let's not get carried away. I mean, that would be like bringing two characters back from the dead. Oh, Christine. Boris is making a fortune on the speaking circuit and writing a book, plus a newspaper column, and he's a star on GBNews. Do you think he'd even want a frontline political role?
I should think it's probably, well, it would be attractive because he's a performer. He likes being on the stage, and it's an enormous political stage at the moment. It's going to get bigger and bigger as the months go by to the election. So, yes, superficially, he would have to somehow find a way of combining it with still earning all his money. So he couldn't take an actual job. But, you know, the more I'm thinking about it, literally just now, the idea of having a Boris battle bus on the campaign trail going around the country, it's really rather fun. It would enliven the election. So I'm beginning to think maybe, yes, as Neil says, bring him back as a campaigner, but not in any serious position. And don't forget, one of the reasons for his downfall was not just Rishi stabbing him in the back. It was Boris stabbing himself in the front. He did not behave as the Prime Minister should. So he's responsible to a very large extent for his own downfall. So no, I think leave him where he is, having fun on the sidelines.
Director Phil, could we hang on to Neil and Christine? But let's bring in my studio guest for a quick reaction. Sajila, this would have Labour running scared, wouldn't it? Boris on the campaign trail.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, to be honest, like, Tory politics is becoming like The Apprentice. Like, you know, when they've all had a go at being like the project manager, nay, the Prime Minister, and now when when you're getting up to the election, like between the two parties, then they choose the old project managers. So obviously in this case it would be Boris, it would be Liz Truss, Blinken, you missed her, Theresa May. You know, there's a big lot to choose from. I personally would just think, well, if you're going to go out with guns blazing. So maybe get them all in, like The Apprentice. You've all kind of got to try and win the game, as it were.
OK, brilliant stuff. Jerry, we're tight on time. Your thoughts on Boris back in the Cabinet, perhaps as Defence Secretary?
Oh, for God's sake, who will we declare war on?
He's a hero.
He is an unexploded bomb. Neil and Christine got it absolutely right. He'd be a campaigner, but a campaign for Boris. The only good thing about putting him in the House of Lords, he can't be Prime Minister. No, a total disaster. Leave him well alone. Neil and I would do much better.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Jerry. And the clock's against us, so my thanks to Neil and Christine Hamilton, who will join us again in the very near future. Have a great weekend, folks.